two filmmakers, Dinesh D'Souza,
4 million minutes of surveillance video around the country.
Michael Moore. Both of them are described differently on Wikipedia. A slew of hit piece mainstream media articles, his Wikipedia page is nearly spotless. The overwhelming majority of liberal academia, moderators, content gatekeepers, and arbiters of digital information, it creates dangerous implications for the future of artificial intelligence. We are going to be looking at two filmmakers. One, Michael Moore, a democratic socialist leftist who is most famously known for his criticizing President George W. Bush and the Bush-era Republicans in the 2000s in his many books and his controversial documentaries during that time. A wide range of issues and topics like his criticism of the healthcare system with his film Sicko and his criticism of the free market with Capitalism, a Love Story. And the other filmmaker, too, Dinesh D'Souza, a conservative right-wing author and documentary film producer who is most notably known for criticizing the liberal left and big government Democrats and the rise of Marxist socialism and communism in America. He may have put a target on his back when he released his 2012 documentary, 2016, Obama's America, and also his 2016 film, Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party. Both of them are described differently on Wikipedia, using sometimes subtle language for describing one and more fair and balanced language to describe the other, exposing the overwhelming bias of the Wikipedia community and the majority of their authors. They more often cite leftist or liberal-leaning media sources to justify framing someone as a conspiracy theorist. However, they do not treat other documentary filmmakers the same way who are on the other side of the political spectrum, who, like Michael Moore, have clearly shown their political bias in their body of work. When examining Michael Moore's Wikipedia page, it begins by describing him as an American film director, producer, screenwriter, and author. Moore's work frequently addresses various social, political, and economic topics. Okay, fair enough. But if you were to view the Wikipedia page of a conservative filmmaker like Dinesh D'Souza, you get a much more uncharitable opening paragraph when they describe him as an American right-wing political commentator, conspiracy theorist, author, and filmmaker. A big difference is, why is D'Souza's political affiliation mentioned straight away, but Moore's isn't? And how come Michael Moore, of all people, isn't also labeled a conspiracy theorist as well? Given his body of work and how he implicates greater conspiracies are at work surrounding the government, mostly when run by Republicans, George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, 9/11, and the Iraq War. He also implies there are conspiracies surrounding the healthcare system and capitalism. Yet none of that is mentioned right off the bat on his Wikipedia page. To the casual person just wanting to do some research on Michael Moore, he's an American film director, producer, screenwriter, and author, whose work frequently addresses various social, political, and economic topics. How come D'Souza did not get the same courtesy in his opening paragraph on his Wikipedia page? This is especially puzzling and inconsistent, considering during the 2000s, Moore was viewed as somewhat of a conspiracy theorist by many and also criticized, namely by Christopher Hitchens in his article from 2004 titled "Un-Fahrenheit 9/11: The Lies of Michael Moore." So what changed over the last 2 decades or so that would allow Michael Moore to escape the conspiracy theorist label? All the multiple sources footnoted in the references section of D'Souza's Wikipedia page are a slew of hit-piece mainstream media articles that covered the same regurgitated story based around when Trump said that he planned to pardon D'Souza for his conviction for an illegal campaign contribution. Unsurprisingly now, looking back in hindsight, it is clear that D'Souza was targeted by a politically motivated prosecution by a partisan Obama-appointed FBI and DOJ. Much in the same way Donald Trump and his team were targeted by a partisan Democrat state and local district attorneys and Biden's FBI and DOJ led by Merrick Garland years later leading up to the 2024 election. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York at the time was none other than James Comey, who was fired by President Trump in 2017 and who spearheaded the now-known fake investigation into the Russiagate hoax. Wikipedia, after all the mounting evidence proving that this was all a hoax, still to this day has a Wikipedia page titled "Russian Interference in the 2016 United States Elections," with no developments after 2023. The main point here is, concerning Dinesh D'Souza's Wikipedia page and the cited footnotes in the opening paragraph that all these liberal journalists wrote these hit pieces all at the same time on May 31st, 2018, all with the same parroted messaging, being sure to mention that he's right-wing and or he's a conspiracy theorist, or that his work is conspiracy-laden, mentioned in one article. While the CNBC article used more fair language, the others were far less charitable when describing D'Souza. Did someone wait until all these hit pieces were written about D'Souza to then log into Wikipedia and edit his page, where then they could add the labels right-wing and conspiracy theorists to link these leftist media articles as credible sources? Almost every source cited in the very first paragraph on his Wikipedia page is from May 31st, 2018, when there was a barrage of media attacks, seemingly angry reaction to Trump announcing D'Souza would be pardoned. Another difference is Michael Moore was never targeted by George W. Bush's FBI or DOJ. And hypothetically, they very easily could have targeted him, and if they had then, they would have been wrong for going after a documentary filmmaker for politically motivated reasons. The liberal left would have gone into a frenzy. But in the 2000s, having a strong political opinion, even controversial ones, and being in opposition to your political opponents was okay and acceptable. It was tolerated, and most people didn't make a mountain out of a molehill. No one was going to try to throw you in jail or sent an army of lawyers after you in a carnival circus court of lawfare. Michael Moore made more than his fair share of comments about the Bush administration, along with Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and the whole gang, and had no shortage of critique for the Republicans in Congress. He didn't mince words, and he hovered on the fringes of libel and slanderous territory. But he himself was never a political target. He made his documentaries, but not without critics calling him out for his sensationalism, false accusations, lies, and misrepresenting information to fit his narrative. Moore's liberal worldview was unabashedly anti-conservative and staunchly progressive and socialist, and later on in the 2000s, Moore endorsed the likes of Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Barack Obama. He made his usual rounds on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, The Colbert Report, and Real Time with Bill Maher, catering to the liberal audiences for the better part of a decade and a half, and he too could be labeled as a leftist political commentator. But somehow his Wikipedia page is nearly spotless, nice and clean. No mainstream media hit pieces in his footnotes. There's a brief section of criticism buried down halfway through the entire page if you scroll down far enough away from the opening paragraph. Perhaps D'Souza didn't deserve the same courtesy as Michael Moore got when it comes to the criticism section of his Wikipedia page. No, it's because all the criticism is sprinkled into what passes itself off as objective facts throughout his page. No need to bury it halfway down his page when you can just lambast the first paragraph with negative labels and leave a trail of citations linked to hit piece articles that were largely all written on the same day. Anyone who can look at this side-by-side comparison objectively can clearly see that one filmmaker and author is being treated differently and unfairly, while the other is portrayed more accurately and fairly. Now, there is also the difference that one is more politically relevant in recent years, where the other one has lost their relevance over the decades. D'Souza has far more political enemies than Moore, due to his conservative stances and his affiliation with Donald Trump. Some recall how Democrats and liberals hated George W. Bush, but compared to Trump, Bush and Dick Cheney are an afterthought. This has made America's political climate a lot different than the climate that Michael Moore enjoyed in the 2000s. Conservatives may have disliked or even hated Michael Moore at times, but they didn't want to ruin his life or get him canceled. Michael Moore didn't like George W. Bush, but he didn't wish him ill or worse. But liberals openly joked about Trump's would-be assassin not being able to shoot better. And the leftists now, they have a deep hatred and disdain for Trump and MAGA, and so Dinesh D'Souza gets a lot of that wrath for simply being a conservative, even though he's been around since the Reagan administration. Wikipedia still has some honest authors with integrity, no matter their political leaning, but not every page or topic is political, and sometimes it really is the online encyclopedia it always was meant to be. However, when it comes to any subject matter or person that falls within the realm of politics, it seems that a larger majority of Wikipedia is politically motivated and authored by biased leftists and liberals, largely due to the overwhelming majority of liberal academia that have all made their presence online as moderators, content gatekeepers, and arbiters of digital information since the late 1990s and early 2000s. Over the decades since the 1970s, the rapid decline of the education system has resulted in a strong leftist bias within the education system, where so-called intellectuals or experts more often take leftist positions when it comes to politics, more so in recent decades. This has created a similar effect as also seen on Reddit and other platforms on the internet, where there is a leftist bubble, and the majority of Democrat and liberal authors outnumber moderate, centrist, or conservative authors, accounts, and posts. This disproportionate number of leftist authors and moderators act as gatekeepers who prevent moderate or conservative-leaning authors from providing a much-needed balance, and who may want to amend, correct, or edit false or non-factual narratives sprinkled into Wikipedia pages. It doesn't take much to just scan through Wikipedia and read different pages on both Democrat politicians or Republicans, and you will see the blatant difference in wording and language used to describe a lot of them. The bias isn't always overt, but when you realize the online sphere has been largely controlled by a growing number of neo-Marxists, progressives, and globalists, it creates dangerous implications for the future of artificial intelligence, since AI will grab information from official sources like Wikipedia. YouTube already does this. It references Wikipedia as if it is the arbiter of truth whenever there is a controversial video uploaded that touches on sensitive political topics. And almost always, YouTube posts these Wikipedia page links under the videos as if to provide official information on any given controversial subject. And so YouTube just decides that Wikipedia is an infallible source of information, that it is reliable and trusted, that Wikipedia authors aren't biased or dishonest in their methods. Being that YouTube is owned by Google, this is disturbing to think about the implications that Google's search results are heavily reliant on Wikipedia, which is why Wikipedia pages are almost always the first search result when using Google. Unfortunately, it seems as if though those that are the gatekeepers of the digital realm are overwhelmingly leftists, and so websites that should be objective, like Wikipedia, end up becoming subversively and sometimes overtly partisan when editing pages and perpetuating narratives. It also doesn't help matters that the mainstream media has also been co-opted and infiltrated by extremist leftist ideology and become overwhelmingly biased to the left in their news and reporting, which gives leftists more fuel and ammo when citing so-called trusted sources. The lines of opinion and fact are blurred, veiled by official sources, but when put under a microscope, the dishonesty is abundant. This is how they can get away with calling someone a conspiracy theorist, because all that needs to happen is a gang of hack journalists pounce on a politically biased talking point headline, run a story, and they all parrot the same language, right-wing commentator and conspiracy, and there you have it. There's your credible source, all in a day's work. The differences in presentation of both Michael Moore, a liberal filmmaker, and Dinesh D'Souza, a conservative filmmaker, is just but one example of how unfairly and dishonest some authors and moderators are on Wikipedia. But the greater scope of the damage is the most concerning part of all of this. It's not merely the caricature or the painting of one political or public figure or another, but it is the bias and deception that plagues the internet as a whole. When surfing the internet, Wikipedia is most of the time the very first search result found on almost anything. When anyone, especially students in school, are doing their research on any given topic, they will use Wikipedia as their main online resource for reliable information. A lot of the time, As long as the subject matter isn't necessarily political, it serves as a great online encyclopedia, subject to changes, corrections, and updates. However, sometimes the changes are not always good, and when political extremists and activists are flooding the authorship of online spaces, the line is blurred between fact and opinion. Those who have been lied to or misled by the mainstream media will edit Wikipedia pages and then cite what they think are reliable sources, and perpetuate a biased narrative about any one person who happens to have the wrong political leanings and ideas. This insidious effort on behalf of social media and online tech companies to actively censor conservative voices or anyone who questioned the official government narrative, namely Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google, and Twitter, was evident when Elon Musk exposed the Twitter files, and there was evidence of shadow banning, censorship, and coordination between Biden's White House officials and the several heads of certain social media platforms. So, Wikipedia is just one part of a larger problem on the internet. We are experiencing an age of information warfare where both sides of the political spectrum are fighting for ideas in the digital space. However, for the longest time, one side has had a monopoly within the digital realm. Ever since the 1990s, the internet has largely been progressive, and many who created sites and platforms tended to lean left in their ideology. It's not only until recent years that the house of cards is starting to bend and its inevitable fall is imminent.